time for us to get into the courtroom. That's right. This is Law 2020. Law 2020 featuring, you know this guy. Everybody in Central Florida knows this guy, Wade Boyette of the BCN Law Firm, bcnlawfirm.com. If you ever want to reach the law firm, it's real easy. You've heard their commercials. You've sang the song over and over again. 855-LAW 2020. 855-LAW 2020. And I'm not a singer, nor is Josh, so we'll just go ahead and let you think of it in your mind, and you can sing it to the people in your car. And everybody sing it in unison, 855-LAW 2020. There you go. All right, you want to chime in on the show? You have any legal question at all? Give us a call at 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696, or text us at 21232. In either case, you do not have to use your real name. Sometimes when it comes to a legal show, people, they're a little apprehensive about calling Wade about this because somebody might hear my name and then tell my boss about it. Nah, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and call us and say your name is Josh. Especially if you're in big trouble, okay? You're wanted in 20 states, 13 countries. Josh. Not our Josh, just any Josh. All right. Call the show right now, 855-297-9696. What was going on in the office this week? What were people coming to see you about? And I understand that part of what they were seeing you about was contested wills. They're not happy.
That is true. First of all, I hope your horse won last night in the Kentucky Derby.
I'd only heard the name, the California horse. I'd only heard that name. I had paid no attention to the Derby this year. It kind of snuck up on me.
Same here. We were driving over to a Derby party, and someone was telling me the story of the different horses, and the story of the California Chrome that won was really interesting. Mm-hmm. Where two guys bought the mom years ago because the mom didn't perform as well, and she ends up having the baby who ends up winning the Kentucky Derby. So two guys who really weren't in the horse industry, buying a horse, it becomes pretty successful.
As you know, because you've been in Central Florida for a long, long time, and you know everybody in Central Florida, which is another advantage of your law firm. But most people in Florida do not know that most Kentucky Derby horses and the horses that race come through Ocala, Florida. That Marion County is actually a little bit more thought of in horse circles than Kentucky, and you would think it was the opposite. Right. But there's a book out now called The Legends of Marion County, and it's about all of the winners that have been either wintered in Marion County or trained in Marion County or came out of stables in Marion County before they became famous.
But that is
cool stories.
It is really cool, and I knew nothing about horse racing or horse betting, but what I do know how to do now is make a mint julep. So, if one good thing came out of the Kentucky Derby yesterday, I learned how to make a mint julep.
And nobody at that party was wearing a silly hat, were they?
Only a few. Only a few. Well, let's talk about some of the things that did happen in the office this week. Things always happen in threes in life, it seems like. And, this week we had several cases that came in. And one of the things that I saw repeatedly come in this week were people wanting to contest wills or trust or estate planning transactions. And two of the scenarios that I saw is, and we're on both sides of the equation in this one, so it's going to be interesting, where, mom passed away, dad's older, dad's been married to mom a long time. Dad ends up hiring a caregiver, wonderful lady. They end up having a bond, usually because the caregiver is spending all the time with dad. Family members are, not around. A lot of them are just completely out of dad's life. Dad makes some decisions at end of life, ends up leaving his estate to the caregiver. Next thing you know, dad dies and the kids show up and they start contesting the documents.
Uh-oh.
And and we're on both sides of the transaction. So I see that a lot. And what I wanted to talk about are what are ways to contest a will. Mm-hmm. How do people usually contest a will? What are the requirements for estate planning documents? And one of the primary requirements is competency. Are you competent when you sign a will, and how do you determine competency? When is competency relevant? What happens usually is, in this case, one of the cases that came into my office is dad was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer. was going into hospice care, made some, big decisions regarding his estate, had several kids, ended up changing his estate to leave it to, two of the children, left one of them, with some assets that were probably less desirable. But, he passed away, several days after going into hospice care. And, is that something, did Dad do something that he shouldn't do by changing his will at the last minute? Mm-hmm. And here's the rule. As long as you're competent at the time that you sign your estate planning document, if there's not undue influence, if there's not duress, then that will is valid. You have the ability to transfer your assets how you want to at your death. Mm-hmm. You just have to have the mental capacity to do so. And you can't be under undue influence, and you can't be under any type of duress. And one of the things that, I do as an attorney is when a child or a kid or a family member or a friend brings a client into my office and they ask for me to prepare an estate planning document or change an estate planning document, what I do is ask the kid to sit out in the lobby. I won't let them come back with Dad. I don't want to hear their opinion. I want to hear Dad's opinion. And for two reasons. One, I've got to, in my professional opinion, determine whether Dad's competent. Does he have the mental capacity? Now, I'm not a physician. I'm not an expert in determining whether someone's competent or not. But what I do, in case I ever have to get called as a witness, is I pretty much ask the same set of questions that I ask every client. And it's easy. What is your name? What is your address? Questions that if someone is of sound mind, they should be able to answer. Mm-hmm. And so it's a pretty good test.
I imagine that duress is a hard one to prove, isn't it?
It is a hard one to prove. Undue influence and duress is very hard. One of my ex-law partners, George Hovis, had a case that went up to the Supreme Court on undue influence and duress. And, we ended up winning that case. And he sort of set the benchmark for that. And it's very tough. What you usually see is someone at the later stages of their life and, aren't in a position to be able to make those kind, or out of fear. Dad, if you don't do this and we're going to put you in a nursing home. I see that kind of stuff. Dad, Mom, if you don't do this, then X. And you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. If they're going, though, under the undue influence, would that be like, they figure that Dad got somehow coerced by the caretaker, maybe not threatened, but coerced in various ways that I'll let the audience's imagination take on?
Absolutely. And, it's amazing. And I've been doing this 20-something years. And out of all my years, I've never seen one of my female clients, one of my widowers, get taken advantage of. They're smart. Women are smart. When their husband passes away, boy, they hoard the money and they become very financially savvy. On the other hand, I have had multiple husbands. They once they pass away, they've been married 25, 30 years. They need that companionship. They need someone there to help them out. And unfortunately, usually the caregiver, comes in, and not always. Most caregivers are amazing people. And they're saints. Unfortunately, a few take advantage of the situation, and we've had two of those cases come in this week. And I don't feel the caregivers, and one of our cases took advantage. I think they were an amazing person, did a great job, and should be entitled. So it goes both ways. I'm
sure you hear that accusation though by the younger kids when they think, I thought sure Dad was going to do this for me. What do you do in the case? And I hear this all the time, and you probably had it in your office, Wade, where the kids come in to see you and they go, I know what the will said, but I also know what Dad said last Christmas, that I was going to get the house.
Again, another thing that I had a longtime client, wonderful gentleman, pass away. And I've seen this case happen probably 5 or 6 times. Is Dad or Mom have great intentions, and they sit down and they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Yeah. So they tell the children, here's what I'm going to do for you. Unfortunately, they either don't get around to changing their documents, with the attorney, or that's really not their intention. And then they pass away. And then you have Dad told me, Mom told me, and the will says something different.
How about the safeguard of you telling your clients, because I know how much attention you give to your clients. It's unbelievable, about things changing. Okay. Jack Smith was going to leave $1 million inheritance to his son who was married to Jane. Right. But along the way, Jane and the son get divorced. Dad dies. Jane comes back to the court and says, look, when that will came out, I was in heir.
Right.
The divorce should not have any standing, does it?
It doesn't. The divorce absolutely has standing. A spouse loses their rights to an inheritance once that divorce decree gets signed, once that divorce is finalized. I see that, a lot where husband and wife get a divorce. Husband or wife do not change their estate planning documents, and then husband and wife pass away. What Florida law says is the spouse loses their rights to spousal rights under Florida law.
All right, very good. So you learned something very important there. All right, when we come back, more conversations coming your way and your legal questions as well. If you want to text us, 21232, the way you do that is, there's a lot of people still don't understand that, and I understand the fact you don't understand it because you're so used to putting in a contact name or somebody's number in the messaging area on your smart device. No, up where it says recipient, just put in the numbers, 21232. It's a computer code. It's not messaging like you normally experience. Or you could call us at 855-297-9696 and benefit from Wade's two-way conversation with you, him asking you questions that you maybe hadn't considered when you wrote the text. We'll be back with more. This is Law 2020 as we ask the experts on News 96.5. Hey, welcome back. This is Law 2020 featuring Wade Boyette of the BCN Law Firm. Contact the show at 855-297-9696 or 21232. Jack in Orlando, what's your call about, bud?
I had a question about owning properties.
Okay, go ahead.
I just acquired, not just, but over the last couple of years, several properties, and I'm not sure. I'm told by different people, and I've been keeping them in my personal name, and I'm worried about asset protection. Whether to put them in, as one person tells me to put them in individual LLCs, another person LLCs, and another person says get an S corp and put them all in there. So I just feel overwhelmed. I know if I sell any, they'll go on self-employment tax, but I also am just worried. And a few of them are vacant, and they're uninsurable. I mean, if you have properties now that are vacant, nobody living in there, that you're possibly going to tear down and build a new house or something, these insurance companies are saying they're uninsurable. So I just want to know what, for pure asset protection, say my net worth is around $1 million, best way to hold property when you have multiple properties, and I know your primary residence to keep it in your name for the tax purposes and write-offs and everything else. But as far as other investment properties that you rent out, and then a few I don't know if I'd call it flip, but sell, within a year or two, how to handle that. Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jack. And you do this, you invest in real estate as sort of not, I don't want to say a hobby, you make income off of it, obviously, but, you just buy several real estate pieces of property, you rent it or you flip it, you buy them in your individual names. And I have a lot of clients do that. Here's the problem. Are you the sole owner of those pieces of real estate? Are they only in your individual name?
I think he hung.
I've just gotten sort of in the last year and a half really busy with properties, and the title companies want to know who to put the deed under. I guess when you have them under contract.
Right. Are they in your individual name?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Are you married?
No, I'm single individual.
Okay. Let me tell you. And if you're doing this and you're buying multiple properties, I do encourage you to set up an LLC. It's going to give you some protection. Now, you asked the question about asset protection planning, and we'll get there. But what you would do is you would create a single member LLC if you're going to be the sole owner. And what that's going to do, what the protection that's going to give you is these properties that you said are uninsurable. If someone was to have an injury or to get hurt on those properties, if you were to have a claim filed because of that house, they would only be able to get the assets that are within that LLC. So it would protect your other assets. You said your net worth was around $1 million. It would protect those assets. Now, let me tell you, if it's a single member LLC, there was a case that came out around 2 years ago called the Olmsted case. And what it did was make a single member LLC. It treated it the same as an S corporation, where if some creditor, an individual creditor, filed a claim, got a judgment, they could make you force sell the assets inside of the LLC. So a single member LLC doesn't give you asset protection from your personal liabilities, but it will give you some protection against someone who gets hurt on one of those properties suing you for your individual assets. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. But the other question is, if say I own 10 properties, should each property be in its own LLC, or can you put a few in separate LLCs, or have more than one?
I mean, do you pay cash for all of your properties, or do you finance
them?
Yes,
in this market, you have to pay cash, for these foreclosure auction properties that I'm picking up.
I wouldn't create an LLC for each property, and I'll tell you why. A lot of these real estate, these rentals that you're buying, the margins are pretty tight, as you know.
Right.
So you go and you create an individual LLC. You've got filing fees. You've got your annual fee you have to pay every year. You've got tax returns you have to file for it. And what you're doing is cutting into those slim margins anyway. What I would do is probably limit 4 or 5 rentals in each LLC. Insure the ones that you can. Your goal is to put renters in there. So hopefully you'll continue to put renters in the properties, be able to insure them, and that's going to limit your liability a lot. Also, consider buying an umbrella policy.
Right, but the umbrella, well, at least the ones I checked with, all properties have to have at least 300 liability, and my insurance on them, but I have a couple properties, as I mentioned, that are uninsurable, so I don't know, maybe just to get rid of those, exclude them. One, I'm planning on building a dream home. It's just taking time to get some things together, the architects and everything else.
Yeah, I wouldn't just get rid of them for the sake of getting rid of them if they're vacant, because hopefully they will not they won't stay vacant forever.
Right.
So and they have more value generating an income, even if you wanted to sell them or get rid of them. So I'd continue trying to lease them.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate it very much.
And if you have any other questions, we do a lot in that arena. Please give me a call at the office. I'll be there Monday.
Will do. Appreciate it. Have
Thank
a great
you.
day.
You too.
Thanks.
Let's give that law office number right now. If you're in the Clermont area, 352-394-2103, 352-394-2103. Anywhere in Florida or anywhere in the country, as a matter of fact, 855-LAW-2020, 855 Law 2020, BCN Law Firm. You can read up on the firm, read up on the associates there, and the practicing attorneys, bcnlawfirm.com. Okay. We're also going to be talking in the next half hour, so stay tuned, about buying or selling a business. How do you do that? Are there business brokers out there? What are their responsibilities? And what are the pitfalls and what are the victories of getting into buying or selling a business or a piece of commercial property? A lot of people in Central Florida are very active in that, but you've got to have the right help, and we'll be talking to a gentleman who is an expert on that as we continue. The numbers real quick to join the show. 21232 is the text. Call us at 855-297-9696. Take time out for a news with our veteran newsman, Dave Wall. All right, welcome back to the show. People are texting. People are going crazy. All right, let's go to the first text at 21232. That's 21232. My parents gave me stock every year for my inheritance, but they put my wife's name on the share. We are divorced now. Is she entitled to the share when her name's on it?
Yes. Here's the thing is, we said earlier about spouses losing certain marital rights when there is a divorce. In this situation, your spouse acquired an ownership interest in the stock once mom or dad put her name on the shares. They made it as a joint ownership asset. Now, in the marital settlement agreement, you can address that, or during the divorce proceeding. So I'm assuming you're represented by an attorney or you're handling your divorce. That would get dealt with. The ownership of those shares should get dealt with in the divorce.
Okay, let's go to the next text. Wade, what is your opinion on putting property in a land trust for asset protection? Thanks, Bob.
Bob, I think it's a great idea. If you go back and look at the history of land acquisitions in Florida, some of our major developments, some of our theme parks, they were all acquired in a land trust. And here's the reason. A lot of people do not want their name tied to a piece of property. And whenever you create a land trust, there are several parties to a land trust. You have the trustee, and then you have the beneficiaries. The trustee is going to be the person that is in the record as the title owner. They become the legal owner. The beneficial owners of the property are the beneficiaries in the land trust, and those are the people who really own the equity in the land. Whenever someone gets sued, usually the person who's suing does a search for assets to determine, is this person worth going after? Do they have enough assets to go after? If your property's in a land trust, that property is not going, it's going to be very difficult for that creditor to find it. So absolutely, I think land trusts are great vehicles for asset protection purposes and to acquire real estate with.
Okay, let's go to the phones. And Lou, what happened to you?
Well, I had an accident. My insurance company called me up 2 days ago, and they tell me that they're going to settle for $25,000 to the other people, render that. That's my liability amount. But my question is, can the other party come after me on top of the $25,000 simultaneously or later on also?
Lou, when you say the other party, were there more than one person in the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, so the insurance company settled with one person. They will probably also settle with the other person. They will sue, and your insurance company will step in and defend you.
Okay, so I don't have to sort of worry that they can come after my bank account?
I wouldn't worry. I would definitely not worry at this time. If you have not been named individually in a lawsuit by that other person, and your insurance company has not refused to step in and defend your, claim, I would not worry at this time.
Okay, fine.
But
I think you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, Lou, if you want to also, and where we can go in a little more detail, and I could give you some peace of mind, please give me a call Monday morning. I'll be glad to walk through of it. That way I can get a little more details and let you know, what I think the insurance company is likely to do.
Hey, thank you so much, Lou. If you want to contact the office and set up an appointment, always a few minutes of free legal advice from our friend Wade Boyette of the BCN Law Firm, bcnlawfirm.com. Between now and your first meeting, you'll get to know more about them on the website. You'll be very pleased. You can call them at 855-LAW-2020, which you can sing along when you're dialing it, 855-LAW-2020 or 352-394-2103. A special guest in the studio showing us unbelievable patience. We still welcome your calls and your texts at 21232 or 855-297-9696. But you have heard of people that are involved in brokering businesses, and we've got one of the best right here in the industry. So, Wade, tell us about how you met this guy and what he does.
Yeah, this is one of my very close friends, and I've worked with this gentleman. His name is Richard Chazelle. He's been a longtime friend and one of the brightest people I know. There are people who I think sometimes know more about the legal industry than lawyers out there practicing. And this is a guy that you can sit down, have a conversation with, and he just amazes me with his knowledge. I use Richard dealing with business brokerage and use him as an expert witness on certain cases dealing with business issues. And we bring Richard in. Last week we talked about forming businesses and the best type of vehicles to use in forming a business. Well, now we've got it formed. If we ever go to sell it, most people get into business. They know how to start it. They know how to run it. Now we have to know how to get out of it. And that's where Richard comes in. He is unbelievable at brokering someone's business and helping them do it the right way. And one of the first things that a person needs to do when they look at brokering a business is coming up with a valuation. And I'm going to let Richard talk briefly about, what do you need to look at and how do you value a business when you get ready to sell it?
Okay. My name is Richard Chaussell, as Wade told you. And in the businesses of the evaluation is very important to set a price. And the most common way to do that is by taking a stock of your inventory and determining the value of the inventory, and that's called hard assets. And then there's intangible assets such as other licenses that come with the business, or location might be a prime location, which is a very active destination point for customers. And you also have trade names that are also intangible assets, and you have to set a value to that. It's just basically what you think that they are compared to the rest of your business. You can look at other comparable businesses and what they sold, and in the industry, you can hear by word of mouth what they sold for and try to evaluate that way. But that's unreliable because there's no record like there is of real property that sells, and you can determine from doc stamps or that you can find the value of that property and then do a comparable market analysis. So that's the way that I would value, such as give you an example. A liquor store has a liquor license, which has a value, and it also has inventory and has a value. And then the financial, and the other way to look at it is the financial, another method is the financial records of the business. And it shows your income, and usually some multiple of that income will determine the price. So you have those two methods to determine price, and they should be if you do it in a manner and which is consistent, you should end up with about the same price. Yeah. And so if you do that, you can set a price that's reasonable to attract buyers.
Richard, where does the phrase blue sky come into this equation? I've heard that all the years I did shopping centers. Somebody's got a yogurt shop and they're about to sell it, and they'd say, well, you know that XYZ is moving in across the street, so you got great blue sky potential. What are they talking about?
Well, blue sky is goodwill. I believe it's what people call goodwill because there's no way to put a value on that. Blue sky is what somebody thinks that their business is worth up and above the income of the business or the assets that it has. And that's called blue sky, and that's just a number that they inflate it to, justifiably in some cases, and sometimes it's not. And a lot of people say, I'm not paying for blue sky. Another is the potential of the business. And what I tell people is if you want to sell your business, then you need to do the work to realize the potential. Somebody else doesn't want to buy the potential, and then they do all of your work for you after they buy it to bring the value up.
Let me ask you this. I saw this happen a couple of times, and I could not believe that anybody would fall for this one. And they actually looked at the company's books instead of asking for income tax returns.
Well, they should ask for both. The income tax returns will have income in there, deductions in there, such as dissipation or I can't think of the phrase right now.
Depreciation. Amortization.
I'm sorry, depreciation and things like that. So when you have those and deductions for interest and things like that, you have to look at the discretionary income, as you say. And sometimes the owner's discretionary income, even in the books that they look at, could have a value, or what the owner's benefit is as they're taken out is sometimes a large dividend that they're paying themselves. And that has to be deducted from the business as far as the bottom line, the net bottom line. So what you have to do is you have to look at it. They might have their children's college tuition program in there and name them as a part-time employee. Or they may have car or plane, jet maintenance in there, which you'd have to have somebody who looks through the books and determine what is actually necessary to run the business rather than what's added in there as a convenience of the owner.
Yeah. One of the things, Rob, and I want to elaborate a little bit on that. When we're working with Richard and establishing values, you were saying tax returns. Absolutely, tax returns are very important. Financial statements are very important, but I also look at their bank statements. I want to see cash flow. Because, while everybody says they put everything on their tax return, sometimes they just happen to forget. And so, I like looking at the cash flow of a business because, that's what you're wanting to make sure you're buying the true numbers, the true value. And a guy like Richard, that's what he does. He peels the onion, looks at the income tax returns, looks at the financial statements, looks at the cash flow analysis of the business to come up with a true value. Where we use Richard a lot is, and people contest the valuation of a business. We get in litigation, we get in divorce situations where a husband and wife have started a business, it's become very successful, and now husband and wife are getting a divorce. It's amazing. Husband will say the business isn't worth anything now, and the wife will say the business is worth everything. And you're having to hire experts to actually come in to put a valuation, to put a number on that business. What is that business really worth? And we'll bring in Richard so he can represent whatever position we're taking to try to make sure that our client either gets the best value if we're on the side that we're trying to get the highest and best value, or find reasons to devalue the business if that's the position we're taking.
Well, one of the things you can do is if you want to check the financial records, you can look at some of the other things they're paying, such as sales tax. That would, if they're taxable, if it's not a service industry, you can look at sales tax and see what sales tax they're paying. Or liquor store, you can look at their liquor invoices because they have to be purchased through a authorized licensed vendor. Or in a laundromat, just change the business, you could look at the utility bills. And that'll tell you what the use of the. But there's other, and you can go down. Every business has something that they have to, on a going concern, you have to have expenses and things that are bought and things that are paid for, and those represent your expenditures. And when you look at those expenditures, you have to have records of those usually. Yep. So you look at those expenditures, and you can determine what type of.
When we come back, Richard, I want to ask you about due diligence on what people need to look for. Is there, underground contamination? And what about how much does a landlord enter into this? If somebody's buying something in a strip center, does the landlord have a say? What do they have to do to negotiate with the landlord? What do they need to do to review the lease? Do you do that for them? Does Wade do that? All right, we're going to come back and talk about those things too. And we have a question up there, and we will answer that question. 21232 is the texting line, or you could call us at 800 or 855-297-9696. Law 2020 featuring Wade Boyette. We'll be back. Hey, welcome back to the show. We're talking law and we're talking business purchases and sales. Okay, first question on a text. Does your law firm handle harassment and labor-related issues in the workplace?
We do, absolutely. I have an attorney, Eileen, in the office. She's amazing. Do me a favor, give her paralegal, Deborah Sleeth, a call Monday, and she'll be glad to help you out and see if you have a potential case. But we'd love to help you in that matter. Okay, the next text says, my mother recently passed away, and has a home that is upside down. Is it worth pursuing the property if it would be difficult for us to afford two homes? If your mom passed away, and it depends on, there's several things you'd have to look at in this. One, did your mom have other assets? If the only asset that your mom had was this piece of property that was in her name, it's upside down, there's a mortgage on the property, then, I would not personally open an estate to handle that property. The bank's going to end up foreclosing and taking it. There's no reason, unless there's some sentimental reasons, why you would want to take a piece of property that's upside down. Now, if there are other assets and you're going to end up having to open up a probate or do some type of an estate administration, there may be some avenues that you can take to negotiate with the bank to try to maybe hopefully get a modification, maybe get a reduction of the principal in the mortgage. While it's not, common, it does happen, and I'd be more than happy to walk you through that to see if is it in your best interest to end up acquiring that piece of property. There's several things that you would have to look at there. All right, we're back with our special guest today, and my question for Richard before the break was,
what kind of due diligence and experts need to be brought in to buying a business like in a shopping center or even a freestanding business in the due diligence? And where does the landlord come into this if it's a shopping center situation?
A shopping center situation, usually zoning issues are not that great in a shopping center because they will have their own rules and bylaws of what it takes to be a tenant there. So you're not going to, but usually in a business that's freestanding or in a small strip plaza, you have to worry about zoning, whether your business can be allowed to, under zoning, because you don't want to purchase a business that is non-conforming and then all of a sudden, and it's gone under the radar, and then find out later on you get a violation notice. In the shopping center, you have the leases are probably, 200 pages. And when you have, they're hard to go through. You should hire somebody like Wade Boyette, or should hire Wade Boyette to review the lease, because there could be onerous things in the lease that you're not going to be happy with, and then you just pass on the business. And you find these out there in the due diligence period, which usually you have soft money, which is your deposit, which means you get a full refund. You should put it that you have an absolute discretion to cancel the sale and terminate the sale and receive a full refund back.
Does the landlord have the obligation to allow somebody to take over a lease in a shopping center?
No, that's one of the problems with a lease, is that the signability of the lease, and sometimes the landlord becomes a fatal flaw in the transaction, and you fail to close. You have to have a good understanding with your landlord. They're going to do a credit check in a shopping center. They'll probably do a credit check. They want a financial statement if the person they don't think can, and they want to sign a guarantee that you're going to pay personally, which is some of the people that buy businesses and have large amount of assets don't want to sign a personal guarantee, and that might be another reason why the sale will fail.
Wade, is there some kind of a title insurance or something like that somebody can buy if they're buying a business that protects them against maybe a pending lawsuit or something that the past owner did?
Yeah, you're not gonna purchase title insurance on the acquisition of the business. And, really you're not going to be able to insure against, certain types of risk. Your best insurance is good due diligence. And so that's why, in most of the businesses, when we represent a buyer, we spend a tremendous amount of time in the due diligence process to make sure that we're not acquiring any assets, any liabilities. One of the things we look at is, how do we acquire that business? Do we acquire the stock or the membership interest in the business? Or do we do an asset sale? And usually when I represent a buyer, I don't want to buy the business in the sense, I don't want to buy the stock, because when I buy the stock, I buy the problems. When I buy the assets, I'm creating a brand new business, and the only problems I'm going to have are problems that I create.
Okay, very good. And let me ask you about this. When you're going about that, are you also counseling them as to the type of what we covered last week, the type of corporation they need to set up to protect themselves, their home, their other assets? Absolutely.
We walk them through what type of business to set up, how to actually acquire the business, how to place, and any time there is an acquisition, there is certain benefits, tax benefits on how you allocate the purchase price to different assets going forward. So we help them from, really the beginning of the process all the way through their end, and then we hope to become their business attorney. So we hope to continue representing them through the life of the business.
Hey, Richard, can you give us your contact information, sir?
Sure. My name is Richard Chaussell. You can reach me at 727-510-1637.
All right, very good. And, of course, the BCN Law Firm, you can go bcnlawfirm.com, or you can simply call them and ask for a consultation, or come by and meet Wade Boyette and his phenomenal partners down there, 352-394-2103 or 855-LAW-2020, 855-LAW-2020, and you'll find copies of this show on YouTube, I believe. How cool is that? All right, Wade, thank you so much for a great show, buddy.
Thank you so much, and enjoy this beautiful weather.